Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Former Action Guys podcast. As always, I'm your host, Justin Kramer. Before we get started, I'd like to announce my first paid sponsor with Southern New Hampshire University. SNHU is a paid sponsor of this video, but if you listen to the show, you know that I push education for everyone, so I'm happy to share their programs. Anything from a professional certificate that shows experience to a master's degree can help you advance in the military or your civilian career. You can go to snhu.edu/formeractionguys to get more information for free or click the link in the show description. SNHU is a nonprofit university that is accredited and wants to make education accessible to everyone by offering flexible online courses with more than 200 degree programs available. If you're in a competitive MOS, you can stand out for promotion by adding a degree to your military records. Active duty service members and their spouses get up to 30% off tuition with dedicated military support from day one to graduation. Why is this important? As you know, there's a cap on tuition assistance from the military, which is why SNHU's discount of 30% off can come in handy to maximize your benefits. When I was in, I maxed out my tuition assistance so that when I got out and I earned my bachelor's degree, I still had more than 12 months of GI Bill benefits to use for an advanced degree, or I can pass those benefits on to my son. Learn more about advancing your military civilian career with SNHU's military programs by going to snhu.edu/formeractionguys. Again, type in snhu.edu/formeractionguys to receive more information from this paid sponsor, or click the link in the show description. Now let's get back to the show.
We did have a couple of opportunities to do some kind of longer duration sniper coalition support operations. I led one in the JOF in 2004. But just this past week was the 20th anniversary of the Battle in the JOF, which seems wild to me. But yeah, and that was opportunity to reflect back on all of the skills that I was teaching guys in the urban sniper course and put them all to use. It wasn't and validate, in some cases, unvalidate things that I thought were right, but it was a really unique opportunity. And we were thinking back to big urban sniper battles had really not occurred since like Leningrad, Stalingrad. So it was thinking back to things that we'd read, snipers that we'd read about back then, and saying, hey, let's try this out. Let's try these things out. And so that was a really cool time.
Yeah, it's Najaf is interesting because people don't really talk about that place very much. It's not like one of the big names like Ramadi, Fallujah, Baghdad. Obviously.
Yeah, it happened right before Fallujah. So I think that's probably why the Fallujah was kicking off, as that was ending, and it wound up not being as big of a fight as it could have been, because largely due to the special operations sniper teams, of which we were a part, but the SEALs had sniper teams there, the Army, SF, their coalition partners, the Polish, were really big. And we were able to move in and kind of ring the big mosque in the Najaf, while the battalion landing team 1-4, I believe, was off in the cemetery, the biggest cemetery in the world. This massive, it's just insanely almost like a little city, with tunnels and tombs and narrow passageways and things like that. And there was some intense fighting in that. But the bulk of at least the brains of the outfit, the Mahdi army, were located inside the mosque. And because the mosque was the third holiest site for Shias, it's like absolutely could not be damaged. So because of that, there was only precision fires allowed, kind of in a 10 block radius of that. And so we were, like I said, snipers primarily were allowed, and we were able to, over the course of a couple of weeks, trit a large percentage of at least the leadership of the force. And that ultimately led to them kind of turning their weapons in and quitting the fight.
That's a very clean way of saying that you went out and sniped a bunch of dudes, trit their leadership. In the book, you said when they brought you guys in, they allowed obviously more flexibility, but they also warned you like, hey, if you go beyond this point, you're kind of on your own. You have to be extremely careful. Can you kind of explain that? And I mean, how do you how do you set yourself up in an urban area like that without one getting identified? You know what I'm saying? It's very easy. Like people in their mind, they see like sniper movies or whatever, and it's like, oh, a guy got into the house and he set up the little cloth and he, you know, set up in the window and he's ready to go. The reality is you got to take over someone's compound and then do all this setup without anyone around knowing. And that's not an easy task. So how did you make that happen?
So in this case, the city was largely empty. Right, all of the non-combatants had fled, which helped out immensely. So we were able to jump in the back of a Bradley and have the Army, you know, the 1-7, I think, cavalry, you know, drive us up as far as they were permitted to go, and you know, they dropped us off, and that's kind of what they told us. They're like, hey man, we can't go any further than this. So if you guys get hit, you know, make your way back here. So we did this, of course, at night, middle of the night, and, you know, let them move off, and then just kind of made our way on foot to, you know, we'd use satellite imagery to pick out a big building. And there weren't a ton of really tall buildings. You know, it's a mistake to get into the highest point of the highest building, because that's obviously the most likely place for a sniper to be. But you obviously need to be somewhere high enough that gives you good vantage points. So we picked a building that looked like it had been a hotel or an apartment building. It was largely empty, but we moved into that. And the thing that you don't really think about is you've got to clear, you know, every single floor of this building as you go up, which is, you know, time consuming and tiring. Right. So we spent half the night, you know, just clearing this building, making sure that it was secure up to the top, and then, you know, figuring out ways to put like early warning devices down below. And then from the roof, myself and another Marine moved up onto the roof again at night, just to get the opportunity to be there when the sun came up, to see see what was going on. And, you know, roofs are tricky to shoot from. You know, you know, if you're not in the tallest building, then obviously there's room for somebody to look down on you, and you're relatively exposed. So in this case, the roof had a lip, you know, a pretty tall lip on it with little drainage holes knocked out that were pretty well suited for us to be able to see what we needed to see and remain pretty well concealed. And you know, while we were doing that, our Marines the rest of the team were down in the rooms below doing that, setting up urban hides. Right. So, you know, finding a way to get far enough back in the room where your muzzle's not sticking out, somebody can't see you, back in the shadows. These rooms, you know, in a perfect world, we would have had curtains to observe through or shoot through, but there were no curtains in any of the structures, so you really couldn't add your own, right? So it really just came down to setting up the best position that we could, and then, you know, picking from there, picking the next position. So we would move every night, you know, to another building. Ultimately, we got to about a block and a half from the mosque, and were able to, you know, like I said, take care of a lot of targets in and around it that you know, led to a pretty successful operation.
How did that work, though? I mean, so what are the ROEs in that kind of situation? Or do you have like a list of individuals that you're looking for with like imagery so you know who they are? Or are you looking just for, you know, so-called nefarious activities? Like and before you shoot, are you, as a guy on the roof and you see something, can you just shoot? Or are you requesting permission every time? You know, like, how's that work?
Yeah, in this situation, like I said, the bulk of what we consider non-combatants were expected to be gone. So there's a term that's like a legal term, I guess, when an area or a target site or whatever is declared hostile, that you can shoot anybody without provocation. And anybody in and around the mosque was declared hostile. Nearly everybody was, you know, walking around there was carrying a weapon. You know, not all of them, but you know, for the most part, they were. And anybody who is, you know, walking around was it was pretty easy to identify that they were up to no good, I guess.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a requirement to notify anybody or ask for permission. We just had the opportunity to engage as targets presented themselves.
As that happened, how did their pattern of life change? Because now they know, after a couple guys start getting smoked, they're like, oh shit, we're being watched by snipers. I imagine the way they moved around and exposed themselves became a little bit trickier for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. They were the first morning was kind of open season because were smart enough to know that we were limited on how close we could get. What they didn't know is that a bunch of snipers had just rolled into town. So the first morning when the sun came up, they were just kind of walking down streets, unaware and relatively, very little security, very little, tactical countermeasures or anything of that nature. That changed, as soon as we started dropping bodies, and they became more wary. They started, moving back to they quickly, and they're not dumb people at all. They quickly moved back and realized that, hey, they can't see us back here. We're safe. We're safe here. And then, of course, so that night we would move forward, and then the sun would come up again, and that took a couple of days for that to sink in, that we weren't stationary.
Mm-hmm.
And they really did not like to move at night at all, which was, obviously we were prepared, to work either way, but very little movement at night, at least initially. A little bit later on, I think they thought that was a better way to get around, and we were able to. We had a couple of JTACs with us there, and so there were some times when we were able to bring in SIF gas on targets, especially at night. As long as it was deconflicted and far enough away from the mosque.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, this was, if I remember the timelines correctly, this is before that Marine sniper team got ambushed and killed, correct? Or dudes came into their hide at night and took out, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That may have happened in 05 or 06. I could be.
I'm pretty sure that was after that.
Now, my question is, was that ever a concern that, someone could come in, like you guys are focused on sniping guys and you're moving and all this stuff. Was there ever a concern like of being like ambushed, overrun, someone sneaking in on your positions? Because, you're talking about being on top of a hotel or something like that. There's a lot of space in that hotel for dudes to maneuver through without you ever knowing about it.
Yeah. We, for one, we had a relatively large team. I think I had 8 or 9 guys. Okay. So we were, rotating through, providing security. For a while, we were able to borrow some soldiers from the 1-7 Cav that helped us out providing security. But, one of the things that early on we started putting our heads together and came back to was, putting broken glass, taking big fluorescent light bulbs and breaking them, on the stairs, so that somebody coming up has got to make some noise. Mm-hmm. You trip wires and things like that. Coke cans on a string with a tripwire. So we used a lot of really old school techniques. I mean, nowadays there's a lot of very small sensors and cameras and things like that people can use. But it was very, very low tech. But fortunately, it was never. Nobody ever tried to come up.
No one ever tried to push your position or anything? That's good.
No.
Now, coming from this, I mean, that's obviously, sounds like you guys did a lot of actual sniper work there. Were there any lessons learned from that kind of deployment, from that kind of engagement that you brought back and spread, the word to other sniper teams within the Marine Corps or military in general?
Yeah, absolutely. We came back, and I had been, before we left, as I had spent time, like I mentioned, as a sniper instructor. I had spent probably more time than the average Force Recon guy had in a sniper platoon before I got to Force Recon. So I was kind of tagged as the lead sniper for the unit. So when we got back, we did the same thing, started just capturing all of the information, particularly use of periscopes was something that had fallen out of favor. That was big, in World War II among snipers. It's almost, you don't see a sniper running around without a periscope anymore, right? Your ability to see without being seen is crucial. We had gone into Iraq with among the first optics with a Horus vision reticle in it, just a completely, the Marine Corps' snipers have always been very, very big on the inertial scope and the reticle and the inertial scope. That's like sacrilege to say that there's anything else. But before our deployment, we had run into some at a trade show, a guy named Todd Hodnett, who's since then has really become like the go-to guy in the world of long-range shooting. But he was working with this company called Horus Vision, and they had the guy that ran the company had developed a new way of putting a reticle pattern and a scope. Much more busy, but a whole lot going on. But it provided the ability to rapidly re-engage targets, to do a better job of range determination, to more quickly bring follow-up shots or shoot on moving targets. And with that, he had built at the time it was a little Palm Pilot with a ballistic programming in it, so you could kind of go through and let it do the math for you. So we came back with that as really the only snipers in the Marine Corps who would use this technology, and that has become absolutely ubiquitous across the Marine Corps now. So now the scopes that are issued come with that reticle pattern, and the software is kind of in use everywhere. So that was one of the a great demonstration of how a special operations unit can test things out on a proof of concept on a small scale, and then hand it over to conventional forces for use. So on that deployment, everything from we actually rebuilt the FISB kit that I was talking about, the full spectrum battle equipment kit, with lighter plates, better plates that would stop more hits of API ammo, new optics, suppressors on our the M4s, and just so many things that we were able to take from other soft units or things that we had access to because we were under Special Operations Command, and transfer those when we got back to the Marine Corps. And a lot of those things are in use now.
Were you guys using the M40A2 at the time?
That we had, man, I should know this. I don't know if we might have had A3s. We didn't do a lot of shooting, so we with the 40s, because we took SR-25s or the Mark 11 55 or a 7.62 gas gun, but it looks like an M4, just bigger, right? So a suppressed night armament rifle, and we were the first guys to deploy with those as well within the Marine Corps. So that's where we put those the Horus Vision reticles on, and we carry those almost exclusively. The Sasser we used a little bit, the 50 cal sniper rifle, and we took, although it didn't get a whole lot of use, a 408 Shytac intervention sniper rifle, was just a massive 408 round that was absolutely accurate to a mile at least, but it was it's just too big and cumbersome for we weren't shooting that far. Most of our shots were within a couple hundred meters.